Welcome to Tales of Hope, where every paw print counts. Animal tie in the house, spreading love, hear the sound. Every week animal stories, rights and welfare in the mix. Step up, take action, we're giving animals a fix. Tales of Hope, raise your voice, make some noise. Change the game for every animal, girl and boy. One world, one fight, let's turn the page. A future for the voiceless, bring hope to center stage.
A very good morning, a good afternoon, and good evening to all our viewers and listeners across the globe. Today, we have a very wonderful personality with us, Mr. Mark Randell from UK, who is a former or a retired senior detective. And now he works as a campaign manager for Nature to Watch. And he has a very good slogan. I've been reading about it. Protecting people and protecting animals. That's a wonderful way to start with. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Okay, Mark, without further ado, from a senior detective to covert operations to global animal welfare advocate, what was the turning point that made you cross over into the cause?
It's interesting because for me, I never really saw it as a crossover. I've always been an animal lover. I've always been around animals since I was a child. And being a police officer is effectively about keeping the vulnerable in society safer. That's when you look at all different kinds of policing, that's what you're trying to do, is trying to keep people safe. And animals are the vulnerable in our society, and therefore I don't see the transition really in being a police officer into particularly caring after animals a huge leap. All we're doing is trying to keep those, the voiceless, the more vulnerable in society. We're trying to look after them and have some sympathy and empathy and make them safe really in our communities and our families and our relationships.
But Mark, you rightly said they are voiceless, and we need to have empathy and a bit of sympathy towards them even. That's the whole reason why this podcast came into being, because I have been going through a lot in terms of trying to protect them and, trying to create awareness so that people can have a bit more empathy towards these souls. Now,
yeah, I mean, not everybody is going to be a massive animal lover. I get that, but there's absolutely no reason to harm animals. And I think that we want to be able to, we don't want to harm anybody, do we? Well, we want to live in a better society, and that has to be to understand that all living beings have a right to exist, and that those who have got a responsibility, a position to be able to do something about it, should do something about it. And then we can all be a little bit, it'd be lovely to be a little bit happier, a little bit nicer, a bit kinder world. Wouldn't that be lovely?
Isn't it? Absolutely. That's the whole purpose. I mean, you rightly mentioned, not everybody has to be an animal lover, but it also has to be, why harm why harm these souls? I mean, if you can't do any good, don't do any harm to them. That's what we're trying to just, send the message across to these people.
Yeah, and it's important that everybody understands it. I mean, it's one thing reaching people who have similar views to ours, but it's critical that we also reach beyond that, and we reach to those that actually don't see it. I mean, a lot of the campaigning work that I do, when I talk to people about it, a lot of them say, I never even thought about that. And to me, that's such an important moment, because people are actually starting to see the light. They're starting to see how this interrelates. You can continually talk to people who are in our situation, but you don't make a huge amount of progress. The biggest progress you make is reaching outside your circle and explaining to others, whether it's in a family unit, whether it's in your workplace, whether it's in your social circles, whether it's in your, you've got an opportunity to get into political circles or to local government or national government and say, hang on a minute, why don't we just consider animals? Because, we talk about protecting animals, protecting people. If we keep animals safe, there is a consequential impact on how people are kept safer. And that's a lot of what my campaigning work is about.
We're gonna get into more details as we move along. How has your policing background shaped the way you investigate and expose animal cruelty today?
I suppose one of the first things you should learn as a police officer is about crime scenes. Just as an example, we all know. If you watch a lot of TV, you watch a lot of Netflix, you watch a lot of movies, we all know that a TV crime scene is an outline of a dead body laying on a pavement out in white, and that's a crime scene that we're all used to seeing. The CSIs come in, they take pictures. Now we see that with a homicide, but what we need to be able to do is to look at all types of crime with that. It's not restricted to serious crime, to what would constitute serious crime if you're identifying it. So with animal cruelty, you need to identify that animal cruelty takes place within a crime scene, and you need to adopt the same levels of expertise, the same levels of investigation to an animal crime scene, because not only will you be able to detect the animal crime, but it will give you indicators into other things. And that's the bit that I particularly teach, is that if you look at an animal crime scene, or any crime scene particularly, you'll see other things. Imagine, it's great coming from the country that invented Sherlock Holmes, because I can keep talking about Sherlock Holmes. When he goes into a crime scene, he sees all the detail, and that's what you need to be doing as a police officer. And if it's animal cruelty, you need to do exactly the same thing.
That's a very wonderful thing you said. As a police officer, you need to look at all the crimes, with the same eye of details. I think in India, we need it very badly at this point in time. And more importantly, I think we need to empathize, teach, or probably the officers down here need a bit more empathy, which is lacking.
Yeah, one of the big pushbacks that I get from a lot of police officers around the world, and I've been lucky, I've spoken to a lot of police officers around the world. One of the pushbacks that I get is that, we're all too busy. We've got all these other things that everybody's putting pressure and time. They want us to do this. They want us to deal with road accidents. They want us to deal with domestic abuse. They want us to deal with people with mental health issues. They want to deal. But if you deal with things before they become a problem, you actually reduce your workload. So understanding and dealing with crime problems before they become a crime problem actually creates time. And if you create time, then you can actually use your policing resource a lot more effectively. So rather than wait for people to be killed, if people are killed, if there's a murder, if there's a homicide, that takes hundreds, thousands of man-hours, police hours. If you stop that happening, or you stop a terrorist incident, or you stop a child abuse incident because you've looked at the crime scene properly, you're creating policing time. So it's never extra work. This is about preventative work.
Absolutely. You just, took the right word. If we can nip it in the bud, and,
yep.
it would be so much better. No.
Desmond Tutu had a wonderful saying about, at some point we've got to stop pulling people out of the river. We've got to go upstream and see why they're falling in. That's exactly what we've got to be able to do. Instead of just keep trying to deal with the consequences, let's start looking at the, why it's happened in the first place.
That's a very good question. The why, we need to understand that. Now, was there a single case or a moment in your career that still haunts you and fuels your mission?
I think there are a number of cases. Over 30 years, you go through a lot of cases, and the cases that probably most resonate with you are ones that parallel your own life. So dealing with like child murders, when my children were small, when our children were small, they're cases that still haunt me a lot. In terms of operationally, missed opportunities still haunt me. I was dealing with a case, an organised crime case about gun running. And these criminals, as they always do, they weren't just involved in gun running, they were involved in dogfighting. And I didn't deal with the dogfighting case, I only dealt with the gun running case. And when I look at instances like that, and I think, yeah, that's exactly what I mean. There was animal abuse happening alongside other more traditional types of crime. If I dealt with them both together, I might actually have been able to put these criminals away for other offences. So I think there's a number of cases that have sat with me, and they're generally about the most vulnerable people that I've dealt with, but also there are missed opportunities, and that's what frustrates me. I think coming out of policing is that I missed opportunities. I've had 30 years of experience of doing that, and 15 years of working with animal welfare. It's frustrating when others are still missing opportunities.
But I guess, you rightly mentioned, if we could look at both of them, because there's animal cruelty happening, that's the reason these are the people who are so used to abusing the animals. They take human abuse also at the same time.
They do, and if you look at it, one of the benefits of doing undercover work was that I worked alongside a lot of criminals. So I kind of got to understand how criminals think. And we can't, if you want to be an effective police officer, you have to think how the criminals are thinking and not how the police officers are thinking, because that's how you get ahead of it. Where police officers like nice tight boundaries and they like to record things in nice boxes and they want to be able to put things down in black and white. A criminal doesn't think like that. You've got to think differently. And if an abuser wants to achieve a goal within, say, a domestic abuse relationship, they will use whatever is at their disposal to be able to achieve that goal. Now, if that is an animal within the domestic abuse family environment, they will use that animal to achieve what it is they want to achieve. So you have to start looking at it like the other way round. If you actually want to make a difference within your community, within your society, try and understand why people are doing it. Why are some children shooting birds with arrows, or why are why do people go and kick cats or poison cats or mutilate cats? I mean, that should be screaming red flags to you as a police officer. If a young male person perhaps is using a knife on a cat, they are potentially a dangerous offender in your community, and you need to be doing something about it.
That's so importantly you said. Now, you often say protecting animals protects people. Can you share the most powerful evidence or case where the truth revealed itself?
Yeah, I mean, history is littered with serial killers who either before killing or at the same time, and it's really important that they could be doing it at the same time. It's not always a consequential event. Are killing animals as well as killing people. I mean, there's a case in Ukraine where 3 young men started killing street animals. And we've got to remember that street animals are more anonymous, which is why abusers go for street animals and farm animals, because they won't get found. So they do their sort of testing process on those animals, and then they kill 21 vulnerable people. So I suppose that's one of the most major cases, but it happens. I don't want to get bogged down with serial killers are really important, but not every police officer deals with a serial killer. But every police officer has to deal with a domestic abuse incident or within community-based crime. And it happens at every level. So we have to move beyond serial killers, whilst, they're fascinating, and the television wouldn't be full of serial killers if they weren't, and books, and we have to look at everyday things. So it could well be that, there's a case in the UK where a woman didn't want to come back to the family environment. She managed to flee, and someone threatened to kill her cat, and she came back and she was subsequently killed. Those kind of things happen on a very, very regular basis in every country. And it's very easy to say, oh, but our country's better, it's different, it's got different attitudes. It happens, I've been fortunate. I've worked in something like 40 countries now, and it happens in every country. It happens in every location. So it's important for everybody to understand that animal abuse and human abuse are not isolated. They cross over consistently.
That's such a very important point you put it out, I think our listeners would understand what exactly it is. animal abuse and human abuse go hand in hand, sort of thing.
Yep.
Absolutely. Why do you think the connection between animal abuse and domestic violence still isn't widely understood or acted upon despite the data that is available?
I think, one of the things that's changed in recent years is the term domestic violence is now being understood more to be about domestic abuse, because there's a lot more understanding that you can control an individual, not necessarily by hitting them, but by exerting psychological pressure on them. Now, in the UK, as an example, 60% of our homes have a pet. And I was mentioning earlier, if the abuser, if the perpetrator wants to achieve something, either they want their partner to stay, or they don't want their partner to stay, or they might want their partner to commit a certain sexual act, or they might want their partner not to go out and mix with other men, or you might want their partner not to go and see her family, or spend any money, or keep them under control. If there's a relationship between the survivor, the victim, and an animal, they will use that to achieve what it is they want to achieve. And we all, those animal lovers that will be listening to this will know about that relationship they have with an animal. They'll know how important it is to them. And in times of stress and in times of in troubling times, that relationship becomes even stronger. You really rely on your pet, your cat, your horse, your donkey, whatever it is you've got a relationship with that you love. Could be a child in this instance, but I'm actually talking about animals. So you've got that relationship. The abuser not only will know that, but they'll build that relationship. So they could even bring an animal into the family home and build that relationship so that the victim starts to love their pet, their cat, or whatever it is, and then they use that relationship to achieve what it is they want to achieve. Criminals, abusers, perpetrators are clever. They're manipulative, and they will manipulate a situation. And if it involves an animal, they will do that to achieve domestic abuse. And I think we're starting to understand that globally a bit better.
I think so, but this is something even an eye-opener for me as well, to be honest, because, talking to you, understanding the other side, because me and my partner, my wife, we have 3 pets at home. We have 3 dogs that we take care of, and we both love them equally, and we don't want, we don't manipulate each other, but rather I would rather say we support each other. When she has to go to work, I go and take care of the kids, and when I need to take care of my ailing old mother, she takes care of them. So for us, it's been more of balancing, apart from the other 6 that I take care of in my mother's compound. So, but yes, what you rightly mentioned, it really got me even thinking, how people can be manipulative with pets. And because what you rightly said, the relationship that the bond that we create with our pets is absolutely, I think it's more than a human bond even at times.
Yeah, there's all sorts of surveys. I don't really like surveys and statistics, but something like 80% of cat owners say that their cat helps them with loneliness. Every single example of pets, of cats, of all pets, not just cats, but any animal, and it could be fish, it could be a bird, it could be anything that you feel that bond with. As a child, I remember that a dog was my best friend. I spent my entire time, the number of secrets I told my dog as I was growing up, and the good thing is because they're voiceless, they can't tell anybody else. So you can trust them. So they're a great confidant as well. But the number of people that will be their animals in their family home, in their relationship, in their communities, and what they give back, and that's what we need to protect, and that's what Protect Animals, Protect People is all about. It's about protecting that animal-human bond and saying this is so important that within our strategies, with our safeguarding strategies, within our policy, within our litigation, within our community protection, we need to recognise that, and we need to say, okay, this is so important That how do we keep people and animals safe together?
That's a very important aspect. To be honest, I'm still trying to figure out the answer to that, because to be honest, the 6 dogs that I take care of in my mother's compound, it's every day I have almost about 40 to 50 people almost threatening me. My 85-year-old mother was threatened that they wanted to throw these kids, the furry babies out. And just because I've been holding my fort, running around to police stations and things like that, is the hostility that I have been facing is enormous. And I am still trying to learn and understand how I can still balance and, get that animosity a bit lesser with these human beings, to be honest.
I mean, one of the messages that I try and sell is yes, it's critically important that we protect the animals. The animal welfare, good animal laws. I'm trying to think. I think your animal law goes back to about 1960 or so. It's very old animal law.
Yes, yeah. It's one from the British. The British rule. We still have that, and you won't believe it. The worst part is, as per the law, they still have it, which is like $50 if you kill an animal.
Yeah.
So it's
I think it's really important that you have good animal welfare legislation, but I think equally you need to say that when animals are being harmed, that has an impact on people. So talk about your mother there. If something would happen to that animal, it's not necessarily. It is a crime against that animal, but that's actually a crime against the person as well, because you've psychologically you've affected them. You may have destroyed something within their life which is valuable to them. You may have harmed them as an individual. And whilst I don't think we have to be careful that we don't make it all about people, but sometimes if you need to reach politicians, you need to reach legislators, you need to reach those in charge of keeping society safe. They need to understand that there is an impact. If you harm or threaten an animal, there will be an impact on the person who cares for that animal, or within the community. I mean, you're going to keep the community, potentially threatened. If they start seeing animals, we know that the impact of children witnessing animal abuse. I think it's something like there's it's 8 times more likely that if a child witnesses animal abuse, they're more likely to grow into an offender themselves. So, if you need to be, children should not grow up around animal abuse. I mean, the United Nations General Comment 26 mentioned that last year. Children should grow up free from witnessing domestic abuse and animal abuse. So, why would you want to anyway? Children should grow up understanding how nature and everything around them fits together, and how we all should be one moving forward. I mean, why would you not want that? Why do you want people growing up around violence to anything?
That's a very important question, but sometimes, sorry to say that, but from what I have been witnessing, over the period of time for the last 4 years, even parents, it's the parents who've been telling the kids, I'll give you a small example. These 6 kids, there were 7 now, there are 6, one I've taken home at my mother's place. I've seen while these little puppies were growing, I would see these children, the puppy is sleeping. You can just walk. You have enough road to walk from the side. But no, what he would do is come and kick it for no reason. And when you talk to the parents, they're like, so what? That kind of attitude is something that is what I know it's difficult to change, but that's what I am trying to bring about, to be honest.
Yeah, again, it happens in every country, and it's combination of education, of whether you need humane education within schools. That's obviously one way you can start to do it. Psychological referral, because children will sometimes they'll pull wings off insects. They will experiment with things. It doesn't mean they're going to become a serial killer, but you need to understand what the consequences are likely to be. As I say, history is littered with individuals, young children who harm animals and then go on to harm people. So it's about education. It's about referring the right kind of cases to the experts, but it's also about enforcement. You can't educate everybody. Sometimes you have to say that is unacceptable behaviour, and we're going to enforce it with fines, with imprisonment, with whatever. So it's a combination of all of those things, but mostly it's about time. This takes so long to shift the cultures around. I mean, it's one of my biggest shocks, I think, is that I want things changed tomorrow, and it's not going to happen. I have to accept that, every step forward is a step forward. And, over the last 15 years, I've seen some good progress. So we are getting there. I'm hopeful. And, I love the title of your podcast, because that's exactly what it is. It's about hope. And there is hope. Can always be really, really negative on this. I couldn't do this if there wasn't hope. And it's so important that we have that.
Absolutely. That's, you've been doing it for 15 years. I have just started. I am still just, 4 years into it. And I am every day, as you rightly said, yes, it's disheartening at times, but I think talking to people like you and all the other, guests that I have had on the podcast is what gives me hope. Yes, we're making a little progress. And I also come from the school of thought where, taking one step at a time and see how it works.
Yeah, and that's all you can do. And I mean, I've seen some good examples of that around the world. So yeah.
Absolutely. Now, how do you envision law enforcement integrating animal protection into safeguarding people more effectively?
I mean, the most logical way. I mean, I do a lot of work around policy and strategy, and as opposed to legislation, because actually legislation generally isn't too bad. It's just not enforced properly. I mean, even with your 1960 legislation, it's adequate. I mean, the sentences aren't great, but there is some adequate. But the first thing is to make sure people are actually doing something with it. So what I tend to look at is I look at every policing policy and strategy, and I say, how could we change this? How could we impact your existing strategy by taking animals seriously? So say, for example, policing strategy, either for India or for your region or for your town, is to tackle domestic abuse, to make sure there is no terrorism, to reduce violence against people in terms of homicides, to reduce child sexual abuse. So those are your priorities, which are most police officers' priorities. I'll go to them and I say, okay, taking animal abuse seriously will actually help you in any of these. It will help you reduce all of these existing crimes. All you need to do is look at your strategy and say, right, okay, how can we reduce our existing priorities by just sticking animal abuse in there. So, for example, with domestic abuse, when we go to a domestic abuse case, do we ask the question, are there animals in the home? Is the perpetrator using or threatening that animal to be able to psychologically control the victim or the survivor? So we're actually asking that question. And police officers need to be able to ask that question when they go into the domestic. We have to remember what I said earlier. This is a domestic abuse crime scene. Treat it as a crime scene. There's an animal in there. Ask the questions about it. If we want to look at child sexual abuse, I know, because a lot of the research that I've done, that there are very strong links between animal sexual abuse and child sexual abuse. And I have seen a lot of cases in India, not necessarily more than anywhere else, of animal sexual abuse. And generally, they are stray animals, farm animals. There'll be animals that the perpetrator thinks kind of they're going to get away with because no one will make a complaint. There could be all sorts of reasons why they're doing that. There's a particular individual, somebody in Germany called Peter Kurtzen that I talk about, who started off sexually abusing farm animals. And I won't go into too much detail because it's pretty horrific. But we need to ask the question within that community, is that individual community need protection from that individual? What are we going to do? I mean, it's not a funny thing. People think of animal sexual abuse as amusing sometimes or a lesser crime. It's a horrific animal welfare issue anyway, but it's also telling you something about that individual. What are you going to do with that individual in your community? It may well, so I looked at 1,000 cases of animal sexual abuse online, of child sexual abuse online, and over 70% of those included animal sexual abuse. It crosses over all the time. So if you're investigating child sexual abuse, are you looking at potential animal sexual abuse cases? If you've got a series of rapes in your community, are you looking at people who have been sexually abusing animals? Because you should be. Homicide, we've already spoken about. Terrorism, there's in a particular case in America I talk about where somebody, because of their religious beliefs or slightly warped religious beliefs, ended up stabbing the family dog. Police investigated that properly, and as a result of that, they stopped a bomb being exploded in New York City because they invested that animal abuse crime scene properly. So look at your existing strategy, your existing priorities, and say, okay, let's put animals into this. It's I mentioned earlier about missed opportunities. This gives us an opportunity without doing any extra work at all in actually reducing our overall crime. Then you start to get police officers, local politicians on board. That's what I tend to do.
That's a very nice thing. I'm gonna talk to you about it after the podcast as well.